Support for Project Panthers is brought to you by Manscaped, the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Their products are precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Manscaped Performance Package, the ultimate men's hygiene bundle. You can join over 6 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with the exclusive offer for you. 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code Project Panthers at manscaped.com. Manscaped was nice enough to send me the Performance Package 4.0, which includes the Lawnmower 4.0, the Weed Whacker, Crop Preserver, Crop Reviver, and the Magic Mat, including free gifts of the Shed, which is a nice little travel bag, and Manscaped Boxers. And honestly, this is a great product. This is a great bundle. If you've ever had questions about the Manscaped products and aren't sure if you want to dive into it, I highly, highly recommend it. It's one of those things that it can be an afterthought as a man, taking care of yourself down there. But having something like this, it motivates you to keep yourself trimmed. It motivates you to keep yourself, at your best. And having something like this, the Lawnmower is such a great electric trimmer. All of the deodorants and the toners that they give you really make you feel like you're taking care of yourself. And honestly, as a man, self-care is important, right? You can't just be left to women. We got to take care of ourselves, man, right? It's important. It's a confidence thing. And this Performance Package 4.0 or any of the performance packages you decide, it will boost your confidence. I promise you. It's going to make you feel better about yourself. And feeling better about yourself is always a good thing, right? So make sure to you get 20% off offer code using Project Panthers at manscaped.com. That comes with free shipping. That's right. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. If you use my offer code Project Panthers, that's PROJECTPANTHERS. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped.
Good right pad save by Gibson as that one was redirected and they score. A goal-mouth scramble and Sam Reinhart gives Florida the lead.
Welcome to Project Panthers, a weekly podcast discussing your Florida Panthers. Now, here's your host, Brunswick.
What a week, what a week, what a week. I am your host, Brunswick. The show is Project Panthers, and oh, baby. What a last couple of weeks it's been in Panthers territory. Welcome to a special double episode of Project Panthers. If you're hearing the sound of my voice, that means you found me on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any other major podcast platform out there on the World Wide Web by searching Project Panthers. Remember to follow us on all social medias as well by searching Project Panthers. Keep the Twitter chat coming. I love chatting with you guys online. Again, my main goal of this podcast has always been to increase the online footprint of the Florida Panthers, and with the talk that we have on Twitter and the agreements and the disagreements and everything, I think that, this podcast is doing exactly what I hoped it would do. So keep it coming. I love it. I really do. Whether you agree with me or not, I think discourse is important with this team, right? Like everything. The Panthers, they do currently sit at 7-5-1, sitting at 5th place in the Atlantic Division. They're barely hanging on to that final wild card playoff spot for now. It's a little alarming because the competition gets harder as the schedule continues. It's definitely been an up and down couple of weeks for the Panthers. Some tough losses under their belt. A lot more adversity faced in these chunks of games. As the power play, they kind of fell off for a period there. A little bit of pickup lately. Ekblad's still nursing that injury, so team searching for some offensive push from the blue line, as well as their top guys. Let's see how it happened over the last couple of weeks. We got a lot to get through here. First, we got to rewind all the way back to Game 5 of the season at home versus the Lightning. First time facing the Lightning in the regular season since being embarrassed in that 4-0 sweep in last year's playoffs. Both teams, they go with their number ones in this one, Bobrovsky and Vasilevsky getting the starts. Panthers, they were the far better team in the first period, I'd say. They outshot the Bolts 18-8, had a ton of great chances. Their puck movement was on point. Passes were tight. They looked a lot like they did last year offensively, and that wasn't something we've seen so far this year. It was encouraging to see, to say the least. Despite the domination for the Cats, the Bolts, they took the lead on a power play goal from Stamkos, winded up from his special slot on top of the circle, and beat Bobrovsky. This is the kind of goal that everyone sees coming, but still hard to defend against. It's kind of like the Ovechkin goal on the power play as well, right? Tkachuk, he got it back pretty quickly, though. He deflected a Montour backhander on net. Teams end the first period tied at 1. The second period, a lot more toned down. Although we did see Nikita Kucherov have a somewhat questionable hit on Alexander Barkov on the sideboards. Now, I wouldn't really call this a dirty hit, but I wouldn't call it clean either. It was a little bit of an awkward turn by Barkov at the end. Kucherov did his best to lean into him. I don't know how clean it was actually, but I don't think it was dirty either. I think Kucherov just seemed to see opportunities to lean into Barkov a little bit, and he took it. Nothing resulted as this, but Barkov, as in terms of penalties, but Barkov did end up going to the dressing room for a bit, but returned not long after. Rudolph Balcers, off of a faceoff, he picks up a loose puck in front of the net. He nets his second goal of this in as many games, and he gives the Cats the first lead of this one. They're taking another one-goal lead into the third period, and the Panthers look to hold on to the lead against their division rivals, but they really did seem content to play shutdown-style hockey and not really push the envelope too much. A big difference from what we saw last season with the team constantly looking to pad their lead and add more and sort of shove it down the other team's throat without really giving them a chance to get back into it. A big swap in style difference this season for the Panthers in that right. Unfortunately, this lack of killer instinct, and that's kind of what I'm going to call it for now. I don't really know how else to label it. I know it's a conscious decision by Maurice to play like this, but on the ice, it feels like a lack of killer instinct. But because of this lack of killer instinct, it kind of comes to bite them back in the ass. Off of another faceoff, Montour gets caught chasing the puck to his own blue line. A little bit out of a position, but the forwards, they don't notice this and they don't compensate it. So Forsling is stuck in front of the net by himself, trying to defend two guys. This leaves Braden Point wide open for an easy tip in off the blue line shot. He wasn't even contested. He basically stood in front of Bobrovsky and tapped the puck in off the shot. Cats only mustered 7 shots in the third period and just did not look nearly as engaged as they did in the first period of this one. And that, I don't know if it's coaching or if it's just a shell shock against the Lightning or what this was in this one. Game eventually made it to overtime. Kucherov, he gets open for a partial break. Matthew Tkachuk is forced to take a slashing penalty to negate the play. But after the whistle, Tkachuk takes exception to Kucherov's hit on Barkov earlier in the game that I mentioned earlier, and he gives him a nice couple shoves into the boards and then a couple shots while he's down. This was kind of a talking point for Twitter after the game. Obviously, Tkachuk was already getting the 2-minute minor for slashing before he took the liberties with Kucherov. I think, personally, I have no problems with it. I like that he did that. I think Tkachuk is new to the rivalry, and he wants to make a statement. He was already taking the penalty, so he just got in a couple of shots for the hell of it, and I'm okay with that. The penalty he took, the initial slashing penalty, was one of those you have to take type of penalties where the guy's on a partial breakaway, and if you can do something to interfere with his chance to score, you're going to do it. And that's what happened there. So I have no issues with him throwing some punches afterwards and showing Kucherov what it's like to have Tkachuk on the other end of this rivalry now. I don't really like Kucherov. I think that's quite evident as a Panthers fan. I think he's a very talented hockey player, but I dislike him as a character guy in terms of how he is on the ice and how he carries himself on the ice. So I loved it. Good. This is a regular season game. These teams are going to meet up a lot more times, and this is kind of Florida's kryptonite in the playoffs. So screw it. Show them you mean business. I like it. But unfortunately, on the ensuing power play, the Tampa Bay Lightning, Braden Point, he scores his second goal of the game. And the Cats end up losing 3-2. They do get a point, but the bigger story obviously here was Matthew Tkachuk. I love it. Like I said, I will stand by his decision to rough up Kucherov a bit here. I'm all right with that. But in this one, the 3-2 loss in overtime, special teams, once again the story. Cats gave the Tampa Bay Lightning 7 power plays, resulting in 2 goals against. The Cats did have 5 of their own power plays, but they failed to convert. So, when your team's getting no power play goals and the opposition's getting 2, not a recipe for success long term. I think Bob was severely outplayed by Vasilevsky as well. He kept the Bolts in it in the first. The Panthers were all over them, and Bob was never tested like that, and they never really got the saves from Bob that they needed. I wouldn't say that he was a problem in this game. He only gave up 3 goals, and none of them were particularly awful, but sometimes you want your $10 million goalie to bail you out a little bit, right? Barkov hit almost 26 minutes of ice time in this one. Reinhart with 23 minutes. So Maurice really working his top dogs a lot. Game 6 of the season at home versus the Islanders. Second meeting in as many weeks for these teams. This one was a semi-matinee on a Sunday, 5 p.m. start. Spencer Knight getting his second start of the season, and Semyon Varlamov in net for the Islanders. Lineup remains the same for all season beyond the Ekblad injury. Eric Stahl still yet to see the ice this time this season as the Panthers, despite now being officially signed. He has not seen the ice yet, so that's all right. Anton Lundell, he gets this game started quickly, getting his first goal of the season just 39 seconds into the game. Nice for him to finally get on the scoreboard, racking up some assists, but not a goal. You can see the relief from him after getting the goal, a little monkey off his back. It was a great individual effort on this one. Made the whole play by himself. He battled in the corner, won the puck back, and got the shot on net all by himself, resulting in the unassisted goal. Halfway through the first period, Eetu Luosterainen, he throws it on net. It hits the Islanders defender, Noah Dobson, right in the face. He unfortunately goes down, but the play for the Panthers, fortunately, does continue. It allows Starboy to pick up the puck and shoot it past Varlamov, confused Varlamov, for a 2-0 Panthers lead. Once again, another impressive first period from the Panthers. They outshot the Islanders 15-8. Again, dictating most of play. I mean, the Islanders, they came alive in the second half of the first period, but, Knight and the Cats, they held them off well. So, another great start by the Cats in this game. Panthers give up a power play goal in the second period to Anders Lee. The Cats actually gave the Islanders 6 power plays in this game. Again, not disciplined enough, especially when your penalty killing is absolutely abysmal. And, I mean, you can't be this undisciplined when your penalty killing is suffering this badly and struggling to get any sort of results. Ryan Lomberg gets his first of the season at the start of the third period off of a wrist shot from the slot. Luosterainen and White getting the assists as the Lamborghini gives the Cats back their 2-goal lead. But those stinky penalties, they keep coming up. Cats take back-to-back penalties, giving the Islanders a 2-man advantage. And what do you know? Anders Lee, he pops his second of the game. And once again, the Panthers give up a power play goal. The lead is cut to 1. Islanders continue to pressure after the goal. Cats did a good job in the dying moments, specifically the top line. They kept the Islanders hemmed in their own zone for most of the time of their shift. With an empty net. They didn't score one, but they were pushing them down and not letting them generate any kind of offense, not even letting them get out of the zone. So a really impressive shift by the top line of Barkov, Verhaeghe, and Reinhart. In this one, Cats hang on to the lead. They win 3-2. They improve to 4-1-1 on the season. Unfortunately, another sit-back third period. There was not enough pressure on the offensive side. I don't really think that this team has the goaltending or defensive personnel right now to be a trap team in the third. I think they need to push the throttle offensively to be successful and to hold on to leads and maintain leads. I know that's a bad habit from last year, but I just simply think they're not good enough defensively or on the goaltending end to be that team. Like, this isn't the 90s New Jersey Devils, right? Again, too many penalties against. I just can't stress that enough. Luosterainen, he had a great game. He was 1 goal, 1 assist, a +3 rating, only 14 minutes of ice time. He's really flourishing as a winger this season. Something I talked about in the opening episode of the season, and he's delivering on that. I really liked Spencer Knight in net in this one as well. A very calming presence, and I'm really hoping to see him getting more games moving forward. Game 7 of the season on the road versus the Hawks. Back in the visitors' side for the Panthers. This one had all the makings of a trap game. First game of a road trip against the Hawks team that is surprisingly 3-2-0, but they do boast the 4th best power play in the league going into this one. A nice recipe for a struggling Panthers special teams. Sergei Bobrovsky back in net after the break in the Islanders game. Alex Stalock in net for the Blackhawks. He's off to a great start in this young season for himself. We get to see that 4th-ranked power play pretty quickly in this one as Colin White takes a questionable goal interference. It looked like he kind of barely touched Stalock, but the Zebras deemed it enough to send him into the sin bin. Barely 30 seconds into the power play, Ty Radish brings the puck in with speed on the blue line, gets around Tkachuk, who's trying to skate backwards and match his speed, but Radish gets around him, rips it from the top of the circle, and blows it past Bob. 1-0 Hawks. Most of the first period was pretty dull as hell. Barely any sustained pressure from the from any team, really, in this one. Just a lot of back and forth, neutral zone play. But with 30 seconds left in the first stanza, 4 Panthers players get caught below the hash marks in their own zone. This leaves Patrick Kane wide open to take a pass from behind the net. He rips it over Bob's shoulder for the 2-0 Hawks lead. This was a complete defensive breakdown. Balsers was totally out of position on this one. I don't even know what happened here. They just fell apart in the last minute of play. Sometimes that happens. You get near the end of the period, everyone just kind of brain farts. Not a great look. Second period was much the same as the first. Panthers not really getting a lot of opportunities despite the refs basically doing their best to hand them a power play goal. The Hawks took 4 penalties during the second period, including giving the Panthers a 90-second 5-on-3, but their power play just seemed to get worse and worse with every opportunity. Just so demoralizing to watch. Absolutely atrocious effort on the power play. Nobody in sync. Shots are weak. People aren't really moving their feet. Snake bitten isn't even the word. Kurashev added a late goal in the second period to make it 3-0 Hawks. A really weak goal by Bobrovsky to give up. I mean, seems to be at least one per game right now for him. Cats, they finally show a pulse in the third period after Eetu Luostarinen. He scores his second in as many games. This seems to get the blood flowing in the Panthers' legs. And just a minute later, Matthew Tkachuk tips in a Montour point shot for his team-leading 4th goal of the season. The Panthers continued to throw everything they could, including the kitchen sink at the Blackhawks, outshooting them 15-6 in the final period, but it was unfortunately a little too late. Taves added an empty netter. The final was 4-2. Panthers now 0 for 23 on their last power play opportunities, so haven't scored a single goal in their last 23 chances on the power play. They've only scored a power play goal in 1 game this season. They scored 2 in that Buffalo game earlier in the year. Sitting 30th in the league right now at 6.1 percentage after being a top 5 power play team in the league last year. Much better on the discipline side tonight. They only gave the Blackhawks 2 power plays, but that power play goal that the Blackhawks scored did end up being the difference maker once again. So again, gotta keep those special teams in check and gotta step up that penalty killing. Barkov and Reinhart still goalless this season. Barkov, dating back to last season, has just 2 goals in his last 19 games played. Reinhart with 3 in his last 17. You need more from your top 2 scorers last year. They were 1-2 in goals last season, and they both have goose eggs. That's going to result in games like this. I loved Tkachuk's comments after the game. He said, "We battled till the end, but we had to because we were so bad in the first 2 periods. So we put ourselves in a terrible position. Definitely our worst 2 periods of hockey this season." You love to hear this accountability from one of your leaders in your locker room. Great to hear him calling out the team and calling a spade a spade. Game 8 of the season on the road versus the Flyers. Second half of a quick road trip for the Cats. Bobrovsky again back in net versus Carter Hart. Second matchup in less than 2 weeks for these teams as well, much like the Islanders earlier in the week. Very busy first period with both teams scoring 2 goals, but Cats giving up a power play goal near the end of the period. Bad defensive zone breakdown on the first goal. Montour cheating on a 3-on-2, leaving Forsling all alone to try and make the play, but he's on a 3-on-1. Bob fails to make a big save. Flyers take a 3-2 lead off a shot from the point. Deflection right past Bob. Barely a minute later, the Panthers fall apart defensively again. Kevin Hayes gets a breakaway. Everyone follows him behind the net, leaving 2 Flyers all alone in front of the net to tap it in past Bobrovsky. A comedy of errors on this one for the Panthers, down 4-2. Panthers finally got a power play goal at the top of the third period, with Brandon Montour ending a close to 0 for 30 streak with the man advantage. Panthers, again, much like the Chicago game, they threw everything they could at Flyers and Carter Hart, outshooting the Flyers 21-5 in the third period and 51-22 throughout the entire game. But Hart stood tall, kept up the effort for the entire game. Unfortunately, the Panthers and their determination, it was not enough. It was a little too late. Flyers hold on for the 4-3 win. I mean, I would have liked to have seen a better effort from Bob. Carter Hart stood tall for his team and kept them in it the entire way. He was an absolute force in net. And just one more key save from Bob would have probably changed the result of this game. When an opposing goaltender makes 48 saves and you can't even make 20, I mean, that's a little disheartening, right? Panthers mini road trip ends in disappointment, losing both games in regulation. Cats back home, game 9 against the Senators, taking on old pal Claude Giroux, now signing a 3-year deal with the Senators in the offseason. Speaking of that, the Senators made a ton of moves in the offseason, boosting their offense, but they don't have the results I think they would like to see so far. Their defense still not improved. So, I mean, you got to get better on defense. You can't just score a lot of goals. The Panthers are living proof of that. Spencer Knight back in net for this one against goaltender Anton Forsberg, who's having a bit of a weak season for himself this year after a pretty impressive season last year. Panthers get off to a great start in this one, taking a 2-goal lead into the first intermission after goals from Verhaeghe. And yes, finally, Alexander Barkov scores his first of the season, and it was on the power play, right? Yeah, moving on up. Senators get a goal back early in the second on the power play as the penalty killing struggles continue for the Panthers. So once again, not getting done shorthanded. Sens tie it long after that when Brady Tkachuk beats Knight with a good shot from an angle that, listen, the shot was beautiful. It was off the wing. It was a really well-placed shot, but I'm sure Knight would have liked to have had this one back. And then the Sens almost take a 3-2 lead, but the goal gets called back for goaltender interference, so Panthers get a little bit fortunate on that one. Verhaeghe, he gives the Cats their own 3-2 lead at the end of the second period with a blast from the top of the circle. Not a typical shot from Verhaeghe. He's not usually the one-timer kind of guy, but he ripped one here. Second goal of the game. Cats take the lead into the third, but the Sens, they tie it up in the third period, but the Panthers get a timely goal from Brandon Martyr with under 4 minutes left in the third period. Matthew Tkachuk adds an empty netter, and the Cats are back in the winning column with a 5-3 victory against their division rivals. Despite outshooting the Senators by an insane amount of 58-26, a common theme in this podcast, it still took a late goal in the final minutes of the game for the Panthers to take the lead. I mean, you have to imagine that all these shots are going to start converting at some point, right? Their underlying numbers are great. They're just not converting. Matty Tkachuk putting up another 3 points in his Panthers debut against his brother Brady Tkachuk. Sibling rivalry. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch over the years to come. I'm really, really looking forward to it. Game 10, back on the road for the Panthers after a very quick stop at home. Taking on the Coyotes, one of the league's worst teams on paper. Definitely the league's worst team. This is the Panthers' first game at the Mullet Arena, the Arizona State University rink that the Coyotes will be using for the next few years as their new arena gets approved and built. I got to say, I love the view in this arena. You're kind of on top of the action. The camera angle is really, it's a college hockey camera angle. Like, it's right on top of the action. It's more into the ice. Sort of feels like you're actually sitting in the lower bowl. I thought it was awesome. Made it feel like a junior game. Spencer Knight back in net for this one after his win against the Senators on Saturday. Karel Vejmelka in net for the Yotes. First period was probably the most boring of the entire season that I've watched so far. Barely any offense generated from either side of the team. Like, it looked like a playoff game, but not the intensity of a playoff game, just the fear of making a mistake. You know, it's just, there wasn't any intensity, there wasn't any physicality. It was just that element of the playoff game that's just, I'm afraid to make a mistake, and I don't want to be the one that screws it up for my own team. That was it. They looked really timid against a very weak Coyotes team, and that was not encouraging, to say the least, for the rest of the night. Second period definitely picks up. Panthers, they dominated for almost the entire 20 minutes. They outshot the Coyotes 16-3, but they even took a lead on a Colin White goal. But after this goal, there isn't much to celebrate from a Panthers perspective. The Coyotes tied it out on a goal from former Panther Lawson Krause, and yes, that goal, indeed, it was also on the power play. The Panthers, they skated hard in the third, but Coyotes, they scored another power play goal in the third period and add an empty netter. They got themselves a nice, clean 3-1 victory. Game ends. Yes, you could argue that the goaltender, Vejmelka, stood on his head again, and he did. But that's what? 3 out of the last 4 games that's been the case where they've lost, right? When do Reinhart and Barkov's goals start coming? Colin White scored his 3rd goal of the season in this one. Top teams' goal scorers have 1 goal combined. That's a problem. A big problem. A massive problem that needs to be righted immediately. The season's not going to be successful if these guys are not scoring goals. We can pack it up and go home now, boys. There's no point. Once again, the special teams were the difference in this game. Coyotes have a top 3 power play in the league, and after this game, the Panthers have, once again, the 30th worst power play and the 27th worst penalty kill. I think Maurice seems indifferent about it, judging by his post-game comments, but I secretly hope behind closed doors he's doing everything to shore up these issues because they are problematic. The Coyotes scored 2 power play goals in this one. That was the difference. The game was 3-1. That was literally the difference. But I have went back and curiosity got the best of me, and I went back and looked at the Winnipeg Jets penalty killing numbers over the last few seasons, and I got to say that does not fill me with optimism for the rest of the season. Anyway, Game 11 on the road, back again versus the Sharks in San Jose. Got to keep a short memory with games like the Arizona one. And the Cats were back in action 2 nights later. Bobrovsky and former Panther James Reimer getting the starts in goal for this one. Panthers came out a lot better to start this game. Barkov nets his second goal of the season on the power play. He heard me from the last episode, from the last little thing, He heard me, even though I recorded these after the fact. Cats outshot the Sharks 19-9 in the first 20 minutes. Again, another impressive first period for the Panthers. Much like the Senators game and the Flyers game, they came out gunning. Radko Gudas scores his first of the season off a point shot in the second period. Cats take a 2-0 lead into the third after a very solid 40 minutes. Very clearly the better team. Establishing a strong forecheck, getting some chances, not really giving the Sharks a lot offensively. They look like the better team, and they are. But the Cats started to sit back in the third period. And again, this is a strategy that I don't know how well this is going to pay off for them. And, well, the Sharks, they punished them for it. They scored a power play goal a minute in, and just 5 minutes later, Erik Karlsson scores his ridiculous 10th goal of the season. What a return to form for him this year. But just like that, it's a tie game. And all the work the Panthers put in to the first 2 periods is erased very quickly. Not good. Halfway through the third period, the Sharks take the lead. And now this game suddenly has the makings of another disappointing loss, despite the great effort in the first 40 minutes. But thankfully, our Lord and Savior, Carter Verhaeghe, he decides to snipe an absolute laser over James Reimer's shoulder with the goal he pulled. And barely a minute to go in the game, so Cats were less than 90 seconds away from a back-to-back regulation losses against the Sharks and Coyotes. That is not good. But Carter Verhaeghe saves the day. OT solved nothing, but Bob, he did make a game-saving stop near the end of the overtime period to keep the game tied. Sam Reinhart is the only one who scores in the shootout, and the Panthers prevail with the 4-3 victory. It was nice to get a power play goal in this one, especially Barkov. Got to keep that power play rolling. And hopefully Reinhart benefits from the shootout goal, gets a little shot of confidence in the arm. Nice 4-3 victory for the Panthers. Tkachuk also with a great game. Another 3 assists for him. He continues to dictate play on the ice. What an absolute stud out there. Game 12 on the road versus the Kings. The Western road trip continues. Panthers back at it again. Now the newly renamed Crypto.com Arena. During that crypto craze we saw during the pandemic where NFTs and crypto and all that crap took over for a hot minute. This game was a real goal fest, though. A lot of offense and not a lot of defense. Game started quietly, though. Ryan Lomberg getting his second of the season off a wicked wrister that beats Jonathan Quick. But the Kings scored 3 goals in the second period, including one with the man advantage. Verhaeghe managed to get one back. And the Kings took a 3-2 lead in the third period after outshooting the Cats 21-14 in the second stanza. Luosterainen, he got the game tied up quickly in the third period, but the two teams exchanged goals after that, leaving it tied at 4 before Bobrovsky gives up a very weak goal for number 5 with just over 3 minutes left in the game. A crushing one to give up in a game that seemed to be a battle of whoever scores last is going to win, and that's exactly what happened. Cats struggled to get any significant chances in the final minutes of this game, and the Kings hold on to a 5-4 lead. Really not a great effort from Bobrovsky in this game. I was waiting for his typical bad goal of the game, like I mentioned earlier on the podcast, and sure enough, it came at a crippling time with barely any time on the clock. Goaltending has been a massive inconsistency to start the season, and that's disappointing to say the least after Bob looked to be back in form last season. Panthers again gave the Kings 6 power plays in this one. No discipline. It's tough to build any momentum 5-on-5 and get your game going when you're in the box that often trying to kill penalties. It's frustrating, the lack of discipline from this team. And the inability to back it up with a penalty killing unit that suffices. It's very frustrating from a fan standpoint. In OT also, have to note this very, very important play. Matthew Tkachuk. This is disappointing. Did a dirty thing and stuck his stick through Jonathan Quick's mask. It was after the whistle. There was a bit of a scrum in front of Quick's net, and Tkachuk kind of poked his stick through Quick's mask and twisted it. Thankfully, he didn't do any damage to Quick's eye, didn't make any contact, but man, this was an extremely dangerous and stupid thing to do. That's literally how someone can lose an eye. It doesn't take a lot for a retina to get scratched or some severe damage to happen, especially when something like a hockey stick, which is not supposed to be near anyone's eye. And we've seen the damage that hockey sticks can do to players' careers. And for instance, a guy like Brian Berard, whose career was altered forever because of a stick off of a slap shot, right? So just no room for this. Completely inexcusable. We knew that this kind of stuff was coming with Tkachuk because we were told, he's a pest, but there's not a lot of room in the game for this kind of shit. I am extremely disappointed in him. And as a result, he gets a 2-game suspension. Honestly, if it was more, I wouldn't have even complained because this kind of stuff is gross. Not a fan of it, Matthew. Not a fan of it, man. Be better. Come on. There's being a pest and there's doing what you did there. That's just not necessary. Anyways, final game of this West Coast road trip for the Panthers before they head home. Game 13 of the season on the road versus the Anaheim Ducks. Finally, the Panthers can wrap up this road trip. But again, without Matthew Tkachuk, after the aforementioned 2-game suspension, it's the second of a back-to-back after the loss of the Kings. So Spencer Knight is back in net for the Panthers. John Gibson in goal for the Ducks. Cats get off on the right foot with a power play goal from Carter Verhaeghe. He's red hot with 6 goals in his last 5 games played. So another power play marker for the Panthers, so that percentage continues to move up slowly, a little bit more to the normalcy and where we kind of expected it to be. Montour, he adds his 4th goal of the season at the start of the second period, but just like we saw in the Sharks game and the Kings game, the Panthers, they kind of let their opponents get right back into it. The first goal was not great. Ryan Strome takes a wrister from the point that Adam Henrique deflects a little bit, not a lot, but it was a pretty innocent shot from the point that just floats right past Spencer Knight. Again, if it was deflected by Knight, it was deflected by Henrique, sorry, not Knight, obviously, and it did pose a bit of a challenge tonight, but I don't know, it looked a bit weak. And then just 27 seconds later, Ryan Strome pounces on a puck in front of the goal and ties the game up for the Ducks. So just like that, it's a tie game. Yikes. But thankfully, though, Sam Reinhart, 3 minutes into the third period, finally removes that 800-pound silverback off of him and scores his first goal of the season, gives the Cats their lead back. Sam Bennett adds another one in the middle of the third period off a nice little pass from Lundell. And the Ducks get a shorthanded goal back late in the third period off a penalty shot from Lundstrom, which was a result of an unfortunate back pass by Barkov, which was not his great play. They did convert on that, but the Panthers got an empty letter, and they stamp home the victory 5-3. So much more disciplined game for the Panthers. They went 2 for 5 on their own power play. One was an empty netter with Sam Reinhart adding that empty net goal on the power play. But still, it's nice to see them get some power play goals. It was a great game for Spencer Knight, despite that little, break in the second period. I'm really hoping that he can take the reins from Bob if he isn't up to the challenge this season. Knight looked a lot more calm, a lot more collected, and the Panthers are going to need someone to step up to shore up this defensive issues because strong goaltending is going to be the backbone of this team if they're going to be successful. For sure. We're now a few weeks into the season. I think it's a good time to break down on a few things that I do like and a few things that I don't like so far that I've seen before we wrap up this epic double episode of Project Panthers. Likes. Right now, 5-on-5 play, it's so strong. I mean, the team looks really, really good at even strength. They play a very balanced game with good offensive pressures. I wish I would see a little bit more chances from the slot and less reliance on point shots, but overall 5-on-5, it's really hard to complain. Other than a couple of bad defensive zone gaffes and mistakes, they've been incredible 5-on-5, and the numbers back that up. Defense, despite the lackluster personnel, I think it's a positive, and I do like what I've seen. They're not a total dumpster fire. Especially when Ekblad went down, I expected a total dumpster fire. And that's not the case. I think with better goaltending in the first 13 games, this team probably has a couple more wins under their belt. And they're probably sitting at, 8-4-1 maybe instead of 7-5-1. Maybe 9-3-1. But overall, I think it could be a lot worse. I think Colin White and Eetu Luostarinen have been very, very bright spots offensively. They're contributing more than I'm sure most of us would have expected. And Brandon Money Montour, which seems to be the new nickname kicking around Twitter. So Money Montour establishing himself as a top 3 defender in this league. He's basically playing over 25 minutes a night. He's sitting at 12 points, including 4 goals in his first 11 games played. Second fastest Panther to reach double-digit points in Panther history in regular season. Just a dominant force back there. Paul Maurice really challenged him after Ekblad went down, and he is up to the task. And, myself included, a lot of people praised Montour and said he needed more utilization. I agreed in a sense offensively. I'll admit personally, I don't think I saw a lot in terms of a all-around game from him. I don't know how much I would have relied on him as a top unit defenseman last season. But boy, has he shut up any of those critiques or criticisms or any of those questions, because he has stepped up and then some. By far the team's best defender, better than Forsling, better than anyone. And he's putting offense on the board to boot. He's borderline carrying the offense. I think I said that Matthew Tkachuk tipped in a Brandon Montour point shot like 3 times in this podcast, right? But also Verhaeghe and Tkachuk, they need to shout out as well, because, Tkachuk has 17 points in 12 games. That's what a disgusting pace he's on. And Verhaeghe's got 8 goals in 13 games, 13 points in 12 games. They're really, really carrying the offense. And I can't, Barkov still has 10 points in 13 games, so he's not, invisible, but the team needs more from him. Reinhart getting there as well. He's got 6 points in 13 games, but he's trending in the right way as well. He had the 2-goal game against Anaheim. But thankfully, Tkachuk and Verhaeghe have really stepped up their games and helped this team offensively, while others have struggled to find their games. Dislikes, since I'm talking about it already, Barkov and Reinhart, their slow starts. These are 2 guys that are just both far too essential for this offense to be off the score sheet for that long. But again, they've scored recently, so hopefully this is a sign of things to come. I don't really like the team sitting back in the third period. I think they are a strong 5-on-5 team, and I understand that Maurice is teaching them to play with a lead, and I think that's a good thing for the playoffs, but I think there's a balance that you need to find there, especially with the roster and the personnel you have. And I don't know if this year is the year for that team. But again, Maurice is the coach. I trust what he's doing for now. And again, the goaltending has been subpar. Bobrovsky specifically, his numbers are similar to his first season in Florida. Kind of continues to down this. If he continues down this path, I really hope to see Spencer Knight finally step up and take up reins as the team's number 1. They're going to need it, because if Bobrovsky's posting, where he sits at right now with his 3.29 goals against average and a .897 save percentage, those are not the numbers of a successful goaltender on a successful team. Now, Knight's numbers aren't a lot better. 2.63 GA is almost, is over a half a goal less, but his save percentage is almost identical at .903. So, concerning. Right? The goalies need to be better. Special teams, this is the awful. This is the... power play sits 30th in the league. Percentage is at 13%. Better than 6%, because that was atrocious. But, man, still 30th in the league. And the penalty killing is 25th. Sitting at 73.5%. So more than 1 out of every 4 power plays is resulting in a power play goal against for the Panthers. Just awful. And these are the team's downfall this season for sure. There's nothing I can pinpoint more directly than the special teams for this team. In a lot of their losses, the differences are power play goals. It was in the Tampa game this season. It was the Chicago game in this episode. It was the Arizona game in this episode. It's the power play goals that make the differences. And they're not getting it done. Special teams was meant to be a point of focus for this team after last season's embarrassment versus the Lightning in round 2 and how they just could not get anything done with the power play or penalty kill. But it seems as though old habits are dying hard. Analytically, the Panthers are doing well, really well, including on the power play. All their underlying stats say the Cats should be potting a lot more goals, especially on the man advantage. But analytics are fine and dandy on paper. You still have to play the games, right? With the Atlantic Division seeming as fierce as ever this season, the Panthers may be on the outside looking in when it comes to the playoff picture this spring if their special teams do not improve. We all agree that this season was probably going to be a bit of a wash, but I think regressing back to a non-playoff team is unacceptable for them. You cannot lose the momentum you built last year with the success of this team. Falling back to mediocrity is not an option for this group. But that's going to do it for me this week. Thank you for joining me on this special double episode of Project Panthers. Remember to visit our new sponsors over at manscaped.com using offer code Project Panthers for 20% off your next order and free shipping. Cannot recommend those products enough. They are fantastic. The Cats are back in action next against the Hurricanes on Wednesday. Schedule gets a lot tougher as the season goes on, so the Panthers will need to be in tip-top shape moving forward. Thankfully, Aaron Ekblad sounds like he's ready to return pretty soon, so maybe that will give him a boost to finally string some wins together and get a bit of a winning streak going. I'll be on vacation next week, so there likely won't be a show for a couple of weeks, but I'll be keeping up to date on Twitter, so keep those interactions coming. I'll be watching the games from where I am, and I'll be criticizing and commenting and doing as much as I can and cracking as many lame jokes as possible on Twitter. Love hearing from you Panthers fans. I am Brunswick. This has been Project Panthers. Go Cats go. Have a week.